Welcome to the show, friends. Greg Koukl, your host, inviting you in. Thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to the time we spend together here today and hope that it will be productive for you, stimulating. I used to say regularly, my goal is to give you a piece of my mind, and you can call in if you like and give me a piece of yours. I haven't said that in a while, but it's still my intention. I think that Christianity, the Christian view of reality, the understanding that Jesus had and the Bible conveys as to way the world and reality is structured is sound, and it's defensible, and I think thoughtful people will find it invigorating to think about this issue. Of course, not all thoughtful people agree with me, but that's why we have shows like this to give reasons and knock things around a little bit. I realize that here we are in towards the end of September and mid-September, actually, but a lot of my daughter's friends who were seniors, she's a senior now, but that were seniors last year are already gone off to college. And usually around this time of year, I offer some thoughts that will be helpful, I hope, encouragements, I hope, to those young people who have gone off. If you're listening, or maybe parents, if you're listening, you can pass these ideas on. I always give a handful of suggestions or guidelines that are important for you while you're away. Actually, it's not just while you're away. It's not that simple. It isn't like you've just gone away and you're coming back. You're actually making a fairly radical transition in your life to being a dependent person to being an independent person. Dependent, you used to live with your folks and they paid your bills and they took care of stuff and drove you around or got you a car or paid for your gas, or you had friends around you that cared for you and they were part you grew up with. In many cases, you have groups of people around you, like youth groups or fellowship groups or church groups or whatever it is, that are all part of your life. And when you go away to college, that would be the characteristic circumstance. Or maybe you move out and you start a job, or maybe you don't move out, but you do start a job. You're moving into an entirely new world, especially if you go away to school. And so you are crossing a bridge that you will never really come back over. You are moving from a dependent, somewhat adolescent, young adult life into adulthood, where not only do you, in some measure, an increasing measure, hopefully you're taking more care of yourself and providing for your own needs, but also you are not answering to other people in the same way. You are not accountable to them. You are on your own. Nobody's looking over your shoulder, telling you how to live, telling you what to do, modeling this good behavior for you, at least not characteristically. You're moving into a new environment. Now, of course, having people look over your shoulder is actually a good thing. I have people looking over my shoulder too. And at this age, I have to engineer it. And I'm glad for it because I need that. We all need that. But when you're kind of being emancipated from all those prior things, you are now being set free. That's emancipation. Set free from those things onto your own. And hopefully, and this is a goal of training young people that I don't think is we do intentionally enough. I focused on this in some measure with especially one of my daughters, but both of them to some degree, and that is self-regulation. Are you learning to manage yourself and to regulate yourself? That is, as you get freedom, the impulse is to say yes to more things that you're now able to say yes to. But not all those things that you are exposed to that you get to say yes to, should you say yes to? Are you self-governing? Are you able to say, okay, I could do that, but I'm not going to because that thing that I could do now with nobody watching is not good? You should be self-governing, self-regulating. You should be learning as a young adult to do that. Now, it's hard to do that, especially at this age. I remember when I was, 18, 19. Well, 19, I was in the Army. And then I was out, and then I was on my own. I mean, I just spent 7 months of active duty. Then I was off to college, and then, I was gone. I took care of everything. I paid my own gas. I paid for school. I paid all my own expenses after I got out of high school. I would come home once in a while and stay for a week or two, but nothing else. I was on my own. So I had to learn to self-regulate. And frankly, I didn't want to regulate certain areas of my life. As a young man, out from underneath a controlling environment, I wanted to do my own thing. And the last thing I wanted to think about was, purity and God and religion. But I wasn't a Christian. And after I became a Christian, I realized now I have to self-regulate. I have to be an adult and say no, or yes, as the case may be, but to things that may not be pleasant. I'd have to say no to things that were pleasant that weren't good, and I had to say yes to things that may not have been so pleasant, but in the long run were going to be good for me. That's what it means to be an adult. People say that young people grow up so fast these days. Actually, I don't think that's true. What happens is young people get adult privileges much earlier than they ever did before. They get all kinds of freedoms much earlier. They get all kinds of access, money, cars, stuff that an earlier generations didn't have access to. But they have not taken on their shoulders the appropriate responsibility for those privileges. So they get the privileges without the responsibility that goes with it. That has a tempering effect on character. And as a result, young people are corrupted. They don't grow up. Growing up means making a contribution, taking responsibility. That's what growing up means. And especially taking responsibility for yourself. Well, kids don't grow up faster. They grow up slower, but they get corrupted faster because they get privileges that don't correspond with the responsibilities that should go along with them. So this is tough for young people now going off. So with that in mind, I have a couple of suggestions. Partly, I'm just saying this, and I hope if you're a student, your parents send you a copy of this so you can listen to it, at least this portion. The first point is that beware, be on your guard. If you love Jesus, then you have to be on your guard. If you don't love Jesus, there's not much I can say to you. You're going to do your own thing until, you figure things out. But if you love Jesus and you want to keep loving Jesus and you want to live in a way that's honoring to him, you are moving into a time where you're very vulnerable. So smart people, self-regulating people, manage that vulnerability. So how do you manage that vulnerability? And this is where my specific recommendations come in. No, the first two things I'm going to say, you're going to say, oh, yeah, of course. Oh, yeah, of course. Okay, got that. Next. But I do not want you to skip past these two things because they are much more vital than you realize. And those two things are the things that you do to actually nurture your love relationship with God and nurture your servant relationship to him and your subject relationship with him. He is your father, but he is also your Lord, and he is also the king. And so our relationship with him falls into a number of different categories, and they each have different textures. We can have a friendship with God, a relationship with God, but it's not as peers. It's a friendship of a lesser to a greater, as a subject to a king, or a child to a father, and as a slave to a lord or master. All of those things are involved. Now, that's the Christian life. That's the nature of our engagement with the Father. So, and I encourage you to think of it mostly as a familial or filial relationship. And God is the Father. Jesus told us to pray, Our Father. So that's the core relationship by which we're relating to God. But we don't want to forget that we owe him obeisance. There's a question coming up here on that issue in just a bit. We owe him honor. We owe him obedience, and we owe him service. So now you're in a new environment where the kinds of incentives and supports that you had before that helped you nurture that particular role I just described in your relationship or your friendship with God, those supports and incentives are gone largely. They're a long way off. All right. So you're going to need to choose to do those things that were easier to do before, but now are going to be harder. You manage your own schedule. You have new responsibilities, and there's lots of distractions. So you cannot sacrifice a good diet if you want to stay healthy. And I am not talking about physical food or physical health. I'm talking about spiritual food and spiritual health. If you do not feed yourself, you will not survive. Simple. How do you feed yourself? There are basically three ways. And I'm not going to tell you anything new. I'm just telling you, as a guy who's been around the block a couple hundred times, this stuff matters for your longevity with the Lord. And the first one is prayer. And if you have not developed a habit of prayer by now, start now. Now, I don't pray every day. That is, I don't sit down and have a kind of official prayer time every day. But I promise you, I am praying all through the day. When things come up, people come up in my mind, circumstances come up, I have an ongoing conversation with God. That's actually kind of easy to do. It's almost like he's a companion. You can chat with him. And so when I get angry, I share that with God. And when I'm anguished, I talk to him about it. And it's not even like I'm talking to him about it, like I'm going to someone to get advice. I mean, there's that kind of factor. I'm just saying he's there with me. That's all I'm saying. It's like if you and I were talking together and we were riding in the car together, and something bugged you, you would tell me about it if you were inclined to be transparent. And so that's the kind of thing I'm talking. He is a companion with me, and I talk to him in that context. But there's another element of this where you sit down and focus on something. And a lot of times that's early in the day, and that's good because it sets the stage for everything that follows. Now, it's that kind of prayer that I don't pray every day. If I have a 7 o'clock or 7:30 or 8 o'clock call for an event, and I have just gotten in, like I did last weekend at 2 in the morning to the hotel, I'm not going to get up at 4 a.m. and get on my knees and pray because that will not work. I won't pray. I'll fall asleep on my knees. Okay. Now I'm going to have, you know, a quick way of committing my day to the Lord. But a lot of times in that circumstance, it's when I get back to the hotel, I'm on my knees before I climb into bed and recounting the day and thanking God for it. And as things come up, offering those things to him. And then during the day, having the interactive thing on an ongoing basis, which I think that's what Paul was talking about when he says pray unceasingly. We are always in the presence of God. Coram Deo, Coram Deo, 2 words, Latin, coram Deo, meaning in the presence of God. And I'll start my day a lot of times, hey, good morning, Lord. I'm here. I'm here, Lord. It's me. I'm not telling him anything new. I'm just consciously putting myself before the Lord and acknowledging for my sake that I belong to him and that this day belongs to him. And that I want to live my day coram Deo before the Lord. And so if I have an early call, I'm not able to kind of shuffle into my study and get my coffee and sit in my easy chair and then commune, converse, read. Instead, I'm hit the carpet running, so to speak. Then I'm going to have at least a few moments in which I mentally am putting God there and commending my day to him. And if I'm doing an event, I want to commend that to him too and ask him to bear fruit, that I might bear fruit that remains. All right. But you can't be so busy that you don't have those times, hopefully in the morning. The psalmist says, early in the morning, I will rise up and meet you. And that's what Jesus did. Early in the morning, while it was still dark, he arose and went out and departed to a lonely place and was praying there. That's in Mark. I know that verse because I've just reflected on a number of times all of the solitary elements. Early in the morning, while it was still dark, he arose and went out and departed to a lonely place and was praying there. Of course, he wasn't alone, obviously. But I've thought about that passage because that encourages me to do the same thing or something like that. Okay? So you want to make sure that your prayer life is what's the right adjective? Rich, robust, satisfying. Prayer's not always satisfying to me. But I know that if I do the work to lay a foundation on a given day regarding me and the things on my mind and on my heart and the needs that I know people have, I am satisfied that I've done that, and I walk away feeling like I have a foundation under me a little bit more than had I not. Something like that. So I'm not laying out the law on the evangelical sacrament of having a quiet time every morning, but I am saying it's smart, and that's the best time to do it before everything distracts you. And if you fall out, if you don't develop that habit, then it's going to be hard for you to stay fed and have the Father and his purposes for the world and your part in it central in your mind. And the same thing applies to Scripture, reading through Scripture. Now, I've mentioned on the show many times how I read through the whole Bible and then I start over again. And I started this about 3 years ago. I think I'm almost done with, no, it was longer than that. It was something that J. Warner Wallace said at a conference, and he really pressed the young people on this. And I'd been a Christian for 45 years at the time or thereabouts, and I didn't follow his principle. I said, I'm doing it. I wish I would have done it half a century ago. You start at the beginning, you've got a checklist, and you just check off the chapters as you read them. You could jump all around, but you keep checking until the whole thing is all checked off. I have a sheet that's like the Bible in a year, but I've been working on it for 4.5 years, since 2020, July. So I'm over 4 years now, but I'm almost done. I got Zechariah and Revelation, I think, left. And then I'll be done. What am I going to do? I'm going to start all over. Now, I don't read every day because I'm not able to, but I try to, at least a chapter. And it's a discipline that allows me to have the full counsel of God, even of passages I don't understand, or even of things that I read that are tedious to read. I still read them because it's God's word and because it tells me the nature of reality. It tells me what the world is really like. The rest of the world are telling me falsehoods. I needed to be told the truth and dine on that on a regular basis. Now, um, so I've mentioned two things so far because of this new place that you're at in your life where it's all up to you. I've mentioned prayer and the word as functions of feeding your spiritual life. Um, One other thing that you need is you need other Christians. You need to be in community with them in such a way that you can be accountable to them, that they have visibility of your life, and that you give them access to be able to ask you the questions about your life and your behavior, especially your moral behavior, that will help you to be faithful to Christ. Now, this might be a crew group or a Ratio Christi group or an intervarsity group, or it could be a youth group at a local church that you connect yourself with. Whatever it is that you find that is consistent with your personality and particular needs, make sure you are part of that group and you are not a Lone Ranger Christian, because you will be picked off. You are going to be a huge target. Because what that group is going to help you to do is to identify with the Christian community instead of identifying with the campus community, which may not be Christian, even if it's a Christian school. And what you're going to experience in that environment, especially if it's a secular school, but a lot of the so-called Christian schools are very much like secular schools in values, and so you're going to experience the same kind of thing, a push by the people there who you are befriending, nice people, great, who are going to push you in the wrong direction and tell you lies about the nature of reality, and they're going to do it persuasively, and they're going to do it with gusto. And if you don't go along with it, you're going to be censored for that. All right? So let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. This is actually a high school kid. And I'm reading here from Natasha Crane's new book, which is When Culture Hates You. It's not out yet. It'll be out, I think, March 11th. And right around that time, I'll have her on the show. But I've already read it because I've endorsed it. And there's a section in there where second half of the book, she's dealing with issues. And this issue here has to do with sexuality. And this is one of the areas that you're going to be most assaulted in. But in particular here, this is transgenderism. And there has been a precipitous rise of gender dysphoria across the board, unheard of in the last 5 years, especially, and especially with regards to adolescent females. It's through the roof. Girls thinking that they're guys and then taking action to make themselves more masculine, even radical action, double mastectomies. Now, Natasha does a great job talking about this trend and the dangers of the trend, but she also cites the influences in the culture that contribute to this, that create a kind of social contagion, is the phrase that's been used, which is a fancy way of saying that they create a fad, that there are massive social pressures to go along with. Now, I'm just using this as an example of social pressure, but I want to read a couple of paragraphs from her book as she introduces a first-person account of a young lady who became a transgender and then changed back, and especially what motivated her to think that way. So Natasha is talking about these dynamics, and I'm picking up here. I've read no firsthand account that better answers the question of incentive, what incentivizes girls, especially here, but it's broader than that, to participate in this social contagion. I've read no first-hand account that's better to answer that question than that of Helena Kirshner. Kirshner was 15 years old when she was introduced to transgender ideology on the social media and microblogging site Tumblr. Transgender ideology meaning the worldview, assumptions, driving the idea that a person's gender can differ from their biological sex. Kirshner began identifying as non binary, and by the time she was 18, she considered herself a transgender man. After a year and a half on testosterone, Kirshner realized she had caused a quote unquote disaster for her health and decided to detransition, that is, make the social and physical changes still possible to live again as her biological sex. Now, in a detailed account of what first led her to seek gender change, she explained how it was the critical theory based social justice thinking discussed by Natasha in Chapter 7 had an impact. She no longer wanted to be seen as privileged, white, straight, cisgender person. By the way, a cisgender is a person whose gender ideation and their physical sex match. So I think I'm a male and I have one. So that would make me cisgender. All right. All right. So here's what she writes. And what I want you to see here is the influence of the social pressure on something as what's one might think as complex as transgenderism. Here's what Kirshner writes. You can't change your race, and pretending to have a different sexuality would be very uncomfortable in practice. But you can absolutely change your gender, and it's as easy as putting she, they in your bio. Instantly, you are transformed from an oppressing, entitled, evil, bigoted, selfish, disgusting, cis heterosexual white scum into a valid trans person who deserves celebration and special coddling to make up for the marginalization and oppression you supposedly now face. Of course, that's all a characterization of critical theory ideas, all right? She continues, now not expected to do as much groveling. You can relax a little and talk about your life without wondering if you are distracting from the struggles of or speaking over marginalized groups, because you are marginalized too as a transgender now. This is the incentive I felt to comb through my thoughts and memories for things that might be further evidence that deep down I wasn't really a girl. Now, when I read that as I was reading Natasha's manuscript, I was stunned. I didn't realize that the pressure was so great regarding critical theory that even this teenager, this 17 and 18-year-old, would feel the internal pressure to just become transgender because now she could be a hero in the eyes of so many other people instead of part of the oppressor class. I read that to you to help you to see the impact, the pressure from the culture for you to deviate from what is true. Now, I don't know if this young lady was a Christian or not. There's no reference to her spiritual convictions. It just is a point that's made in high school, the pressure she was receiving regarding critical theory and being characterized as an oppressor, and she could change that instantly by simply changing her pronouns and claiming to be transgender. And college is worse in terms of its social pressure. And gender is just one element. There are a whole host of other things that Christians properly stand for and reflect as true, which are true, that are completely counter to the cultural narrative. And therefore, since Christians characteristically, if they understand the biblical worldview, they are cisgendered. In fact, they're cisgender normative. In other words, that's the way it's supposed to be. They are heterosexual and heteronormative. Okay. And they also often are white, and male and Christian. And all of these are huge negatives in the social atmosphere of the college environment. Therefore, Christians especially are personas non grata in that environment, and the pressure is intense to compromise. That's why you need to be fed with prayer and the word and the fellowship that you get from a community of Christians you're well connected with. And of course, apologetics helps. Apologetics helps. And the other thing that's going to be a huge pressure is going to be just sex itself, because now sex is available and it's applauded in that environment, where you came from an environment where it wasn't so available and it wasn't at least outwardly applauded, and therefore there was more sexual purity. It's easier to stay faithful, not when you get to college. There's going to be all kinds of pressure there. So those are the things to watch out for. You are in a new environment. You are starting your life as an independent adult. For most people leaving high school and going off to college or into the workforce, and you are going to face all kinds of challenges. And the challenges are going to be because you are staying faithful to Jesus. And if you don't stay faithful to Jesus, it's not a challenge. I remember a friend of mine who's a Christian guy. I worked with him at Hope Chapel at Hermosa Beach. And he said, before I was a Christian, I never struggled with temptation. Yeah, the point is, he always gave into it. It wasn't a struggle. It's easy. And so if you're not committed to being faithful to Christ, it's not going to be a struggle. It's going to be easy. But if you're committed to standing firm and standing tall and being faithful to Christ and not turning your back on him, it's going to be hard. So you need every advantage you can muster, and that is feeding well, prayer, intimacy with God, the word, the truth, getting into your DNA, and then a group of friends and close people that can care for you and love you and help you to be accountable to your Savior, because the peer pressure will be great to take you out, and the sexual pressure, I should say availability, is a very powerful enticement for you to begin questioning the truth. Once you start living in an immoral fashion in that regard, that's when people start thinking, well, maybe Christianity isn't as true as I thought. Why? Because that's moral doubt. There is moral behavior that is causing them to question the truth that they were raised with and they had cherished up until now. So there's my advice from Uncle Greg here for those of you on your way to the university or any other circumstance of transition, emancipation, as you are becoming your own self-regulated person. Let's go to break, and then we'll take your calls on Stand to Reason. All right, friends, just a quick update on some things that are going on. We just had our Southern California reality. It was fabulous. Got great reports. I wasn't there. I was out of town, just conflicting schedule, but the news I got back was great. We have our Seattle one coming up October 18 and 19. We'll have Minneapolis November 8th and 9th. If you're in that neck of the woods, it's a little earlier than it usually is in November, not the second or third weekend, but the first full weekend of November. And then starting this spring, Dallas will be February 21st and 22nd. We'll be in Philly March 21st and 22nd. And we're going to be in Dayton, Ohio, April 25th and 26th. So we've got a one-off there in the Midwest, and people have been asking about that. So we decided, for this year at least, to move to Dayton, Ohio. That's April 25th and 26th. So hopefully Central America, all the Midwest states. My heart's in the Midwest. That's where I grew up. And that's where we're going to have that particular event. We got Jay Warner Wallace is going to be back with us this year. Jason Jimenez is back. Megan Allman is back. And of course, the Stand to Reason team, you're going to love this. The theme this year is It Is Written. And so the focus is on Scripture. If you want more detail about the event, realityapologetics.com is where you can go to get all the skinny on that. Once more, realityapologetics.com. Next event, October 18 and 19. I'm just looking at a note here. The main seating is already sold out. Seattle's already sold out. However, there is overflow still available. I think there's a discount for that, but you'll be in the overflow section. Sometimes it doesn't matter that much because, you look at the screens anyway if you got a big venue, and that's what you'll have in the overflow section. So that's Seattle, Washington. It may be, you have to check it out, but for Minneapolis, November 8th and 9th, there is still there might still be early bird. I'm not sure. You have to check that out. Okay. So just letting you know. By the way, SDRU, September 30th has a new course. Robbie Lashua teaches it. It's called Engaging Latter-day Saints. Engaging Latter-day Saints. Your Mormon friends, sign up to be among the first to access the course at training.str.org. Okay, one last thing here. I'm going to be speaking at the Garnet and Gold Forum at Erskine College in Due West, South Carolina on Thursday and Friday, October 24th and 25th. It's about a little more than a month away, just giving you advance notice. Alan Schleman will be speaking at the Baptist General Convention in Saginaw, Texas, and that'll be Saturday, October 26th. And John Noyes will speak at the Chinese Bible Church in San Diego on Sunday, October 27th. Get all those details at str.org/events. You can know where all of us are at, so you can participate if you're able to do that. Okay, that said, let's go to Salem, Oregon, and Alden. Alden, welcome to the show.
Hey, Greg.
Hey.
Good to hear you. My name's Aben, and
it's
I have a
Aiden.
question
Sorry,
for you.
I misread that. Aiden, welcome to the show, Aiden.
Oh, yeah, it's Aben with a B. Very weird. You met me at Baylor University about a year ago.
Yeah.
And you actually really encouraged me to share the gospel to one of my atheist friends. So I really appreciate that.
You're
welcome. You have a very fabulous mind, and I love the show. My question today is in regards to honor.
Okay.
And so my thoughts are about what is honor and glory, and, well, what's the point of it? Just to elaborate a little bit, to get more specificity on the question.
Okay.
Is, for example, a farmer who is living a peaceful and calm life.
Okay.
How does there's no going out to fight for something. When I think of glory and honor, I think of going into war and fighting for the king and really going for it. Sacrifice for the greater good. But for the farmer who's just content with his with just the value of just existing,
mm-hmm.
What really is the point of honor and glory? And then why do I need to do that for God? Why do I need to?
Okay. Well.
Give glory for God.
Okay. Good. I'm curious, Aben. Is this a question that your atheist friend posed to you, just out of curiosity, or is this something that you've wondered yourself?
This is something I've wondered myself.
Okay.
So I just got out of college. And
mm-hmm.
now I'm embarking on the journey of, okay, well, what does the Lord have for me next?
Okay.
And I'm really struggling with, okay, well, I'm supposed to get glory and honor, but I don't know what that is, and I don't know why I need it, and why do I need to fight for it? if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Well, I think there's a little bit of confusion here. There's actually two questions, as far as I could tell. One of them has to do with you getting glory and honor, and you associate that, oh, well, with warfare, for example. Somebody who fights well in battle can get glory and honor, but what about the farmer who's just plowing his field? Okay. And then the second question has to do with whether, about God, and why should we give him glory and honor? Is that correct?
The second question, the second one, the first one, I'm not really talking about like my own recognition. Um, Actually, mostly the second question.
The second question, right?
Yes, the second one.
Okay. So,
What's yeah?
yeah, okay.
What's the point of glory and honor?
I'm sorry, say that sentence again.
What's the point
Okay.
of glory and honor?
Regarding God.
Yeah.
Okay, because the simple answer, and I'm going to give you an illustration to try to make it more concrete for you. The simple answer is that he is due it. He deserves it. All right. So let me give an illustration. You mentioned kind of a military circumstance a few moments ago. Are you a fan of the military at all, or are you a military history or things like that, or combat?
Yep. Family. Have been military. Grandfather was in the military. Great grandfather's in the military. World
Okay.
War II.
Okay, got it.
Officers, stuff
Good.
like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So this will be a good illustration. And I am too. I was Army 68 to 74, but I mean, I didn't contribute much. As it turned out, I was a reservist. I stayed home most of the time. But I love military history and reading about combat, and I love the whole idea of human beings putting themselves out at risk for the sake of others or for the sake of some greater thing. In fact, I'm halfway through the book by Miller on the Masters of the Air. Okay, that's the title of it. About Apple TV has also got a series about this book too, and it's about the Army Air Force strategic bombing campaign over Europe during the Second World War. And I'm so taken with the incredible sacrifice these crews of the B-17 Flying Fortresses had to make in order to secure a free skies for the invasion in 1944 in June 6. So I'm just giving you all this background, and partly, well, you
Yep.
know what I'm talking about, and I think you get a sense of how amazing it is what they did. Okay, now having said that, do you think, with regards to those individuals, let's just say Captain Morgan, who flew the Memphis Belle, first one celebrated as doing 20 complete missions, the guys could go home, okay, with the forts, the B-17s. Um, do you think that pilot who accomplished that goal deserves to be praised?
Yeah.
Okay.
But why?
Well, wait a minute. If you think he deserves to be praised, then you must know why.
No.
Because he did
If
something praiseworthy. He put himself in harm's way, and in order to accomplish a noble, virtuous goal, which is, do his part to free Europe of the threat of totalitarianism under Nazism.
yeah.
Okay, so
So I get what you're talking about, but that's not exactly my question because um, I know that God deserves glory and honor, but kind of like how a man mowing his lawn, he deserves to get paid. Well, of course he deserves to get paid. He needs the payment, but what's the purpose of the payment? What's the purpose of money? It's, for example, he wants to use it for food. He needs to eat.
okay.
So my question is what is the purpose of glory and honor? I know that God deserves it. I just don't know why.
Okay. Well, with human beings and God, it's a little different. God is honorable because he's of his moral perfection, and he is
Yeah.
glorious. So we act to, when we say we give him glory, we're not taking something called glory and adding it to his batch of glory. We are honoring him for being glorious. Okay, and we are ascribing glory to him. We're ascribing goodness to him. We're ascribing the honor to him that he already has. I mean, it's like it's you meet a really incredibly beautiful girl and you say, oh my gosh, you are gorgeous. Or maybe we would say, again, back to the military, something somebody did, and we say, oh my gosh, that was so incredible what you did. And we see this in all sorts of things, whether it's military or whether it's football. You see this incredible thing.
Hmm.
We say, OMG, right? That was incredible. What are we doing? We are acknowledging the goodness or the expertise of or the beauty of the thing we're beholding. We're not creating any of that. We're acknowledging it, and and I don't know how else to say it, except for that it feels appropriate. It feels like the appropriate thing to do, to give honor where honor is due. All right, and so I mean, I don't. The person mowing the lawn, it's not a very noble enterprise per se. It isn't like, oh, say you're cutting grass, but a lot depends on the context too. If you have a person who cuts lawns for a living, and what they are doing is doing it faithfully and well to provide for their family, then what they're doing is something noble. The work they're doing is noble, and they should be honored for that. That is, you acknowledge the goodness of the thing that they're doing in virtue of the native goodness that's in what that person is doing. So
So
the honor and glory isn't a substance you attach to something. It's native to the thing, and you're acknowledging it.
okay, so it's acknowledging what someone has already done, and I'm just wondering, how does it serve that person? How does that, because God doesn't really need our affirmations at all to still be Him.
He
God
doesn't.
can
He
just be
doesn't
like
need.
that
Right. You're right.
intense firm.
He doesn't need anything. It just is I'm not exactly sure how else to say it. You're looking for in a certain sense. It sounds like the currency value of the honor. Okay.
Yeah.
Guy does a job, he gets
Yeah.
paid. He can take the money and then he can buy something with it, whatever. So how does the honor translate into some kind of currency? It isn't like that. It's the wrong kind of characterization. The honor and glory is an acknowledgement one makes regarding another person. You see, a Medal of Honor celebration, whatever, and the person who's receiving the Medal of Honor is receiving the Medal of Honor in virtue of something that he did that is profoundly honorable, and the giving of that highest award militarily is to acknowledge what has already been done and the greatness and goodness of what's already been done. It's to honor that person who did the honorable thing. You might say it's a just, appropriate recompense or giving what is due, but that it's due to me is
Uh-huh.
is intuitively understood, and and then what what does that do for the person? It gives them honor. It acknowledges the inherent goodness of the behavior that's in question here, or that's in view, and that's basically what's happening. So you're celebrating goodness. Maybe there's a simpler way of putting it, and it is itself a good thing to celebrate goodness. How about that? It's
So,
intrinsically
wh-
good to do so. It isn't instrumentally. It isn't good because it gets you something further, like the money for mowing the lawn will get you food. It is
mm,
itself a good thing to do. It's intrinsically good.
so, I'm pardon my frankness. But just saying something's valuable because it's valuable doesn't make it valuable.
No,
That's
right. It doesn't
what.
make it. It's acknowledging the
Oh,
value. So, so,
what?
so think of it. I mean, I'm just going back over the same illustration, just so there isn't this confusion that I think it was built into what you just said. When a person
Yeah.
gets the Medal of Honor, they are not creating the honor. The honor was real when the act of heroism was done. It was an honorable
Mm,
thing to do, and the medal just acknowledges that honor. It's a third person acknowledgement of the goodness that was done.
okay. Well, to take this one step further, what's the point of doing things that are honorable and glorifying if that's just all you get is acknowledgement? Like, I don't want to be recognized. I don't want to be known. I can just live on my farm and be completely happy. Um, I don't need 100 crowns in heaven. I just want one. Why should I step out of my comfort zone to push towards that? Like, I don't need recognition.
Okay, the presumption there, in a way, I kind of understand, because they talk about getting all your crowns in heaven, and I don't care about crowns. Are you going to walk in streets of gold? Are you going to have a big mansion? Well, I don't care about that stuff. I don't. I
Yeah.
care about this. Well done, good and faithful servant. That's what I care about. But when God says, Jesus says, well done, good and faithful servant, what is he doing? He is honoring the servant for having done well. And to get the approval of God, that is glory. That is ascribing something glorious to. It's a glorious thing to receive the approval of God, the honor that God gives when Jesus says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And maybe I'm just trying to relate to your sentence about, well, I'm just a farmer. I don't care about. Well, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. You ought to care about pleasing God. You ought to care about that. You ought to care about that God gives you approval for the way you lived your life. I mean, that's the summum bonum. That's the greatest good, and that is to glorify God. That is, live in a way that honors Him,
Mm-hmm.
and to enjoy Him forever. Right? That's the way the Westminster Catechism puts it, but I think it captures it well. So I don't care what you do for you. You can mow lawns or clean sewers or whatever, but as long as you are doing it, you're not doing it for the crown. That's what I relate with you in that regard. I'm not doing it for the crown, but I do I want to please my Father, my Heavenly Father. I want him to be pleased with me. That's why I said earlier, coram Deo, I'm going to live my life before the Father, because I'm beholden to him and I want to bring honor to him. And I know I will have succeeded in that if, when I cross over, I hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant. And that's all the honor I care about. He throw some crowns at me. I don't care about the crowns, but those are metaphors anyway. So we don't have a sense of what
Yeah.
that amounts to. Now, Lewis talks
Yeah.
about this. You may want to, I just got a minute now on the show here, but you may want to,
Yeah. Go ahead.
you may want to read The Weight of Glory by C.S. Lewis.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
It's a chapter in a larger piece of essays, but The Weight of Glory. And he talks about glory. And actually, part of that book is, that essay is a bit beyond me, just saying. But
mm.
that might be a better source than me to get clarity on this issue of glory. All right, Aben?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah, you're welcome. And interesting conversation, and very fair questions and discussion. I appreciate you calling. I'm glad. I'm glad it was encouraging when I met you in Baylor a year or so ago.
Oh, totally.
Okay, all
You're
the
doing
best.
really good work. Keep it up,
All right.
and blessings.
Okay, thank you, Aben. All the best to you. All right, that's it, friends. Been a great hour, I think. Yeah, there's my music. I'm not comfortable ending without a music underbid there. Then I know I'm not making a mistake in my clock. All right. Greg Koukl here for Stand to Reason. Give him heaven, friends. Bye-bye now.